It's a huge week coming up for the NHL. We got the draft, we got free agency. Will Marc Bergevin finally land that big fish that we're all craving like crazy?
Go, Habs, go!
Gotta say thanks to my buddy Mike for lending me the vintage 1993 Patrik Laine Stanley Cup jersey. I just thought you'd want to get a good look at it, so you're welcome. Alright, let's just talk about Patrik Laine first. Let's get it out of the way, then we'll get into the draft, then we'll get into free agency and see how Marc Bergevin and his brass will finally try and improve the top 6 forward group on this Canadiens team. Now this news we already know. According to Pierre LeBrun, about a week and a half ago or so, the Montreal Canadiens are not interested and are not in the Patrik Laine sweepstakes. The only reason I really thought Patrik Laine would actually be a fit for this Canadiens roster is because yes, they do have the cap room and money to spend. Do they have the cap room and money to spend for the next 6 years on a massive front-loaded contract? I don't think so. But the reason I thought he would be a decent fit in Montreal is, of course, what? The Finnish connection. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, even throw on Arturi Lehkonen in there, Joel Armia, Ben Chiarot, not a Finn, but a former teammate of Laine's. 2 years ago, Auston Matthews is throwing text John Tavares' way, recruiting him, trying to get him to come to Toronto, and it kind of worked. So my thought is Joel Armia or Ben Chiarot maybe throwing a text to Patrik Laine and saying, hey, like, what do you think about being a Montreal Canadien? That was my thought. It sounds good on paper. He would be amazing on the first line for the Canadiens. But when you come down to reality, you realize if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, the general manager of the Winnipeg Jets, where Patrik Laine currently plays, you think to yourself, why on earth would I trade Patrik Laine? Speaking of Auston Matthews, Laine went number 2 overall in the 2016 NHL draft and is a prolific goal scorer. He's still not even at his best yet. He's 21, 22 years old. There's no reason, I don't even see how they would ever pull a deal off unless they just traded the entire farm to the Winnipeg Jets, which is what Marc Bergevin basically hinted at anyway, is that if they're going to land a big fish like Laine or Taylor Hall, who I know is a UFA, they're going to have to give up a lot in order to make room for one of these guys. Marc Bergevin is not all for, if you haven't noticed, throwing a whole bunch of money at a single player, at a superstar, and letting him lead the way and try to get us to the 25th Cup. I think we'd all agree that Carey Price and Shea Weber are all-stars. Superstars, yeah, I think Carey can get the superstar title as a goaltender, but have we had the superstar forward? No, we haven't. We had a superstar defenseman in PK, but again, as you can tell, Bergevin has a thing with individual players becoming too big of a deal. My theory is Marc Bergevin and the Canadiens brass don't want any player on the Montreal Canadiens to become bigger than the Montreal Canadiens. That's not what they're about. They never have been. If you listen to John Beliveau's words, they come to mind right now. Team success first, and then individual success. So what I mean by that is Marc Bergevin and his brass don't seem to be interested in going after the big fish. And you know something? I kind of understand where they're coming from. It's not nearly as sexy not to be able to try to, get a guy like Taylor Hall or Laine or, whoever in the free agency sweepstakes. But the fact is, if we add some good, strong forward depth with trading, ideally, the first-round pick in the next few days here, we could be looking at an upgrade on the top 6 and possibly bottom 6 to really round out all 4 lines and really see us get back into contending status, which is what we all want, right?
Ding, ding, ding! What do we have for him, Johnny?
This is such an exciting week. I mean, Habs fans have been waiting so long for Marc Bergevin to pull the trigger on a deal that is going to put this team over the top. We really just need to get over the hump at this point. And he's got the cap room. I like the way that Bergie, holds his cards close to the chest and doesn't necessarily put it out there what he's into. I mean, if a Laine deal did miraculously show up, I really don't know that the media would ever know about it until it actually happens. Just like when John Tavares signed with the Leafs, a tweet came out from the John Tavares account, and that's all they really knew. There wasn't a whole lot of substance to Tavares actually coming to Toronto ahead of time. No one really knew until it was announced by the media on July 1st in 2018. It's crazy to think it's like Christmas this week for NHL fans. We have the draft on Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday is free agent day. I mean, it's like Christmas week for hockey fans. So by the end of this week, the Montreal Canadiens could be looking a lot different than they did at the beginning of this week. So we really hope that there's free agent names out there. I'm looking at Dadanov from Florida, Hoffman. These guys, I mean, I think the Canadiens could afford them. That's what I really believe. But I don't know, being that Dadanov is actually a UFA, he may demand quite a bit, being that he is a 20-plus goal scorer. He played on the top line with Jonathan Huberdeau in Florida and Barkov at center. So it's almost hard to see them letting him go. But if they're going to make room to improve their roster, you have to think they're going to at least consider moving on from him. He has complete control anyway. I can see the Canadiens really making the Tampa Bay Lightning a trade partner, or at least trying to, but it's going to be tough. A lot of those guys don't want out of Tampa Bay. In a cap world like this, Julien Brisebois is going to have to let go of some of his players. Patrick Maroon is out there right now. I mean, I would love to see him on a third or fourth line role with the Canadiens. Does he want to play with Montreal? That's always the big question about free agents is, do they want to come to the city? There's something about Alex Killorn being in a Montreal Canadiens uniform that I just really like. I have no idea if it's going to happen. I keep seeing the picture on Twitter of him just sleeping with the Stanley Cup in his seat on the airplane. But man, that would be something. If Tampa's going to let go of somebody like Alex Killorn, he's got a cap hit of just over $5 million, I believe, and he's signed with term as well. We just have no idea. We never really know who wants to go where and what GMs are going to be willing to part with what pieces. So I hope to see us trade with Tampa Bay. If they can take someone out of their top six, we'd obviously love that. Put in a package deal with a prospect, a draft pick, and maybe a roster player, of course. And then, yeah, let's do it. Weeks and weeks ago, Darren Dreger did have a phone call on TSN 690 in Montreal that indicated that he thought Taylor Hall would be a great fit in Montreal, and he thinks that Taylor would enjoy playing in Montreal. Again, the money is always going to be a concern. We don't want to throw a ton of money at a big fish, it seems, but I mean, he's a Canadian guy. He's over 6 feet, over 200 pounds. Obviously, is a Hart Trophy winner. But the fact remains, we're not going to throw money, obviously, at a big fish. But I mean, I just think sometimes that if they're willing to come down on their average annual value in the salary, oh man, I would love to take a shot at Taylor Hall, but who knows? I mean, we really don't know because we're not really hearing a lot from Taylor Hall's camp, at least not publicly right now. So by the end of the week, we're obviously going to hear more. No more on the big fish. I mean, I think Canadiens fans, we just know not to expect a big fish to come to Montreal at this point. At least we don't want to set the expectation because it just hasn't happened. I do see a lot of fans out there, though, that are going to be disappointed if the Habs don't land a big fish like a Laine or a Taylor Hall or you name them. I mean, like, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So for those that are already setting themselves up for disappointment, you're going to be disappointed if you're expecting one of those big fish. What we need is some size, some skill, and if you take a look at Eric Engel's most recent release, for example, on Sportsnet about who they could target in free agency, there's some decent picks there. They're guys that are maybe a little more under the radar. They're not superstars, but they can certainly help this group get to the next level. I know I promised in my first episode there'll be a lot of acting impressions and stuff, but we're kind of talking business right now. It's a huge week. We got the draft, we got free agency. It's once again Christmas week for hockey fans. Despite this pandemic, we are treated to this huge news week for the NHL. At least we expect it to be. Hopefully we get some trades done. Hopefully we get some signings done that we can actually, at the end of this week, just go, that I can live with. There's a little Ace Ventura there for you. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to this channel. Would love to engage with more Habs fans, hockey fans in general. I don't care what team you cheer for. But thank you so much for the support, checking out this show, and we'll see you again next time.
Merci de voir regardé. Veuillez vous abonner.